Oh, yeah. What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 44 of the Sailor Jerry podcast. My name is Matt Cothran. I am still your host. Today is Thursday, September 8th, 2022, and it is a beautiful day in California. I hope everyone's doing awesome out there. Talk to me, people. What's going on? What you been up to? I hope everybody here in America had a good Labor Day weekend. It was an awesome weekend. Got to hang out, got to watch the Taylor Hawkins Memorial Concert on YouTube. Absolutely an incredible event. Amazing musicians, remembering an amazing musician and man. Rest in peace, Taylor Hawkins. What else is going on? We got Bronx tour right around the corner, back in the zone. And it's really crazy to think about, because if you follow the Sailor Jerry podcast, if you listen to the Sailor Jerry podcast, you know I pretty much just got home from tour. So it's crazy how quick time goes by right now. Our first show is on October 4th in San Diego, and this tour is incredible. It's Bronx, The Chats, Drug Church, and Scowl. And these shows are going to be nuts. So if you're looking for a ticket, go to thebronx.com with 3 X's, BRONXXX, and grab yourself a ticket. You can also, of course, check out The Chats, Drug Church, Scowl. We got Meatwave and Robot Monster joining us on the second leg as well. So a lot of great music in that package. So grab yourself a ticket. Hopefully we'll see you on the road. Other than that, what else is there to talk about? What do you think about when you think about 44? This is episode 44. I think about Reggie Jackson, of course, New York Yankees, 44. I think about Detective Harry Callahan from Dirty Harry, the 80s and the 70s cop movie played by Clint Eastwood. He was one of the greatest characters of all time, completely unhinged. And that era of movies is super cool. It's just like, it's like watching The Warriors or something like that. But anyways, he would always say, "Do you feel lucky?" Because he shot the 44 Magnum, which is the most powerful handgun in the world. And so I ask you, the listeners of Sailor Jerry podcast, do you feel lucky? It's time for episode 44. Riki Rachtman once referred to himself as the Forrest Gump of rock and roll and heavy metal. And all he was simply trying to say is that he always seemed to find himself at the right place at the right time. In this outrageous episode, we take a look back at Riki's indisputable life as a rock and roll ambassador. From his crazed early days in the valleys of Los Angeles as a punk rock kid, to the nonstop debauchery of the Sunset Strip and LA's infamous Cathouse. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, let's not forget that Riki helped usher in a new type of cool as the first heavily tattooed TV personality when he hosted MTV's Headbangers Ball. Riki has the best stories, and I love listening to them. So sit back, relax, pour yourself some Sailor Jerry, and let's go.
And look, we both have Darby Crash pictures in the background.
That's amazing.
But do you know what the greatest story of this picture is? Something you'll never knew, that you probably never knew.
Hit me.
Have you seen that picture before?
That's him on the skateboard, right?
Yeah, that was my skateboard.
What?
That was my skateboard. Yep, that was my skateboard.
How? Well, you got to tell me the story then. What happened?
So here's the story. Much to people's dismay, when I was a young lad, I listened to more Black Flag than Black Sabbath. I was an LA punk rocker. I mean, I grew up listening to metal. I loved Deep Purple, even went through my Ted Nugent phase. I loved Motorhead as a kid, love Motorhead still today, 2 Motorhead tattoos. But when I was much younger, I really, really loved punk rock, just loved punk rock, still do to this day. And I'm smart enough to be able to see that a lot of thrash sounds a lot like punk rock, and that Motorhead is a punk rock band, a metal band, and a rock band. But that's not the point. So I was very submerged in the LA punk rock scene. I was going to a lot of old, early punk rock shows in 1979. And I was a skater, and I worked at the Marina Del Rey skate park. And I had two of my friends. One was Drew Bernstein, who started the company Lip Service. And I was friends with this guy, Rob Henley, who was portrayed in the Germs movie as being Darby's gay lover. I don't know if that was true or not, but I knew Rob and I used to skateboard. So I went to his apartment, which was the one that you see in that picture, which was on, I think it was on Highland and Fountain. And that was my skateboard. And the way that my skateboard was painted, if you can't really tell in the picture, I painted it with like white paint and liquid paper. And then I took a stencil, and then I made stencils that says Germs GI, and I wrote it all over the skateboard. I tried to draw a circle in the front, but I don't draw very well. And at the back of it was Black Flag bars. But the Germs were like it for me when I was a kid.
Did you know Darby at all?
Yeah, I have a picture. I have a photo. For everybody that thinks I'm full of shit, I have a photo when Drew Bernstein, myself, and Darby went to Universal Studios tour.
No way.
Yeah, and it was, I'll never forget this because Darby had a mohawk, and he had like a really like huge mohawk, and he had this jacket that said Harrow Punks on it, and he just got back from London. And we were in line to go on like the rides, and everybody wanted to take pictures with Darby because, in 1980, you didn't really see a lot of crazy Mohawk punk rockers. And Darby was telling me, he's like, man, I saw this band in England. I'll never forget this. He says, I saw this band in England, and this was like the greatest band in the world. And they had the most elaborate stage show, and they were so great. And this is like the greatest band. I'm like, what are they called? It's like Adam and the Ants.
Dude, I know. I never got his Adam and the Ants thing, dude. I just never understood it. It was the weirdest thing for me.
So I like Adam and the Ants, and the early stuff was I know this is not going where most people thought it would go, but the early stuff was kind of heavy. It was some of his versions of Physical, and I like it. I never saw Adam and the Ants live or any of that stuff, but I could appreciate it.
Yeah, man, that's cool. I always just thought that era, like him when he came back from London and he was just all about the Ants, was just like, it was just a wild thing for me,
Yeah, he left the Germs and he did his solo records, the Darby Crash Band, and I just wasn't interested in it at all. And I never really saw Darby Crash Band, and then unfortunately he died.
So live, how were the Germs? Were they legit? Was Darby as legit?
Okay, here's my best way of explaining what the Germs were. Because the first time, this is to tell you how early it was and just to date myself. The first time I saw the Germs was a Halloween show at the Hong Kong Cafe. And the opening band was Black Flag. And the singer, okay, no, they weren't maybe they weren't the opening band. Black Flag, Fear, Chinas Comidas, and the Germs.
Oh, wow.
And Black Flag, the singer, was Keith Morris in a Spider-Man outfit. So that's how early it was. So when everybody's like, oh, do you like Dez? You do like Henry? I'm like,
Keith, baby. Spider Keith.
For me, it was Ron. I really liked when Ron was singing. I like Ron Reyes a lot. But I saw the Germs, and I was pretty sure this was one of the worst bands I had ever seen in my life. And then I saw them again, and I'm like, this might be one of the worst bands I've ever seen in my life. And then I started listening to them and watching them and was convinced that the Germs were the greatest band. And then I started reading Darby's lyrics, and his lyrics were so intelligent. And I was in some 80s rock bands that I even took little bits and pieces from Germs lyrics. And Darby used words that I didn't even know as a kid that I learned. And if you read I mean, they're so intricate. And I love the band, but they were just, you would go to a show and the whole thing was maybe I'm going, and laying on the ground or whatever. But somewhere between them being the worst band ever, I decided that they were the best band ever, because it was one of the reasons that I like the Germs is the same reason that I like Guns N' Roses in the early days, is the shows were not contrived and they were not planned out, and you didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't know if you were going to see a great show or if you were going to see a bad show. With Guns N' Roses in the early days, I never saw a bad show, but you didn't know if they were just going to go through the songs or if Axl was going to beat the shit out of somebody sitting in the front row. Okay, back then standing in the front of the club, but with me with rock and roll, the thing that I love the most about rock and roll is spontaneous combustion. There you go. Is things that you never know exactly when it's going to happen or what's going to happen. If you happen to see them a couple nights in a row, they're probably not going to do the same thing every single show.
Yeah, that's the best part about it for me too. And that's kind of as someone who sings in a band, that's the one thing that you kind of have to watch out for, in my opinion, because it's an easy trap to fall into, especially when you play a bunch of shows every year or you've been doing it for a long time. It's real easy to fall into that pattern of just like, okay, I'm going to say the same shit every night. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But when it comes to rock and roll, it's the unpredictability. It's the pouring gas on the fire, the lawless, reckless, attitude of it, and the spontaneity of anything goes and anything can happen. That is what really makes it special.
I'm getting ready to do my first spoken word show September 11th.
Yeah.
And I don't have any other shows planned. And people say, like, would you do more shows? And if I do, it's going to be the same thing every time. There's not going to be that. I don't know. I can't say that because I've never done one show yet. But I'm going to pretty much say the same thing, but it's going to be a lot of ad libs. So I don't know how.
Well, it's weird too, because I mean, you got like stand-up comedians, for instance. Like they have a routine, and it's different for all kind of genres of art and entertainment. But specifically talking about rock and roll and being in a band and playing live, and when you go to see a show, it's that element, like you're saying, you don't know what the fuck is going to happen. That's the exciting part of it. Of course, there's the music. That's a big piece of the puzzle too, obviously, but you got to love that when you walk into a club or a concert of any kind, and you just kind of, like with Fear in the early days, you got to keep your head on a swivel. You don't know what's going to happen.
The thing is, I think there's a difference between a show and just like a live performance. It's like there's bands that would play live, and I'll use an example like a Motley Crue in the Girls, Dr. Feelgood. Everything was choreographed with the light and the explosions, and it was cool and it was kind of fun back then. But then there's also bands that it's not planned at all, and you don't know exactly what they're going to say. Maybe the songs are somewhat the same way, but both of them can be good if it doesn't seem contrived and that they're just doing the same thing. I've seen the Foo Fighters a couple times, and it seems the beauty of the Foo Fighters is that when that band plays live, you kind of feel like, even though you're in a baseball stadium, that it's kind of an intimate live show, and he just goofs around, but he does pretty much the same exact stuff every single show, but it's still really good. But I think it's really hard for a band to perform and make it feel intimate in a stadium.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And there's only a certain amount of bands that can do that. You're absolutely right. And the Feuds were definitely one of them, man. So real quick, going back to, your first spoken word kind of, concert event here, One Foot in the Gutter. It's going to be at the Neighborhood Theater in Charlotte, North Carolina, September 11th. It's uncensored and, it's unpredictable. This first event you got coming up. What is your headspace like going into this thing, and how excited are you about it?
Nah, I'm a fucking wreck. Okay. Absolutely. Is it okay if I swear here?
Oh yeah.
I am a wreck. The first thing, which probably wasn't good planning on my part, is I just got back from riding 10,000 miles on a motorcycle for charity. Me and my wife go ride a motorcycle all over America. And I probably should have spent time preparing this show. And I've got like a couple days, I've got like a little over a week before the show. And I also have to go to Springfield to work my other job, which is with Fox Sports with the flat track racing. So I think where I am at the point right now is it's not how am I going to fill the time? It's like, what do I omit?
Yeah.
Because there's some people that just want to hear, what was it like hanging with Pantera? But I also want to talk about, getting arrested and working my way to rags, to riches, to losing it all, and then coming back and
Yeah.
where I am now. And I'm going to put a lot of it into it. And it's just a whirlwind. It's just a whirlwind right now because I don't have an agent. I don't have a producer. I don't have anybody to run any of this stuff by. I mean, I feel so bad for my wife because I tell Lee, I'm like, sit down, I'm going to do this. So she has to hear these same stories over and over again. And, some of the stories, I don't even know if she's going to want to hear,
Yeah.
So there's a lot of great stuff, but, I'm very lucky that, I helped create the Cathouse. I helped create a rock and roll era. And even though I think I was just in the right place, right time, there were some magical things that happened back then. And, the things that people want to know about, the best Headbangers Ball episodes, what was it like hanging with GNR at the time? And, I'm going to go everything from way back to when I was just a kid to maybe a little bit of the punk rock days to everything. I'm going to incorporate, but there is going to be a lot of stories that I've never told about rock and roll. And one of the nice things about it not being, well, I don't know if this is good or bad, but because it's not a book, nobody's going to edit and say, you can't say that. It's like,
Yeah,
say that. And then somebody's going to say, you can't say that. I was like, oops,
exactly.
And,
Yeah.
and my job is I really want to make it entertaining. I want to talk and get up there on stage and make everybody I want everybody to feel like I got my arms around them and we're all like hanging out and telling stories, and to say, do I look at somebody like Henry Rollins as an influence? Absolutely. I watch a lot of his shows and he's such a great storyteller. And I think that, most of my peers are heavy metal fans. And when I tell them I'm going to do a spoken word, people have no idea what a spoken word is. And even though there's been some people that are great at it, like, Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden, Corey Taylor of Slipknot, Scott Ian did one from Anthrax, a lot of them don't know. So I'm like, well, I'm going to go up on stage and I'm going to tell stories. And that's pretty much what I'm going to do. And I don't know how it's going to go. I mean, right now we're only a few days away and I've decided I want to put multimedia in it, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to because I haven't even written the script yet, and how much I'm going to keep to the script, So I really think it's going to be great. I mean, I think it's going to be the best thing I've ever done, which sets the bar pretty low. So we'll see. I'm really excited, and I am putting more into this than anything I've ever done, and I've done a lot of pretty cool things.
Yeah, man, I'm super stoked for you, and I think it's going to be awesome. And going back to Rollins a little bit there, that was big for me growing up. I saw him do some early spoken word stuff and at Beyond Baroque in Venice, and I caught him a bunch of times. And there's just something really cool about that whole vibe, and it's definitely a lost art nowadays with social media and all that stuff. So I'm stoked for you. I know it's going to be fucking awesome. I wish I could be there. But let's go back a little bit here, because the crazy thing that blows my mind in the year 2022 that there is possibly a whole, generation of 21-year-old rockers out there that might not even know about the Cathouse. God forbid, might not know about Headbangers Ball. It's absolutely insane. But let's go back a bit. And I want to talk about, your experience growing up in Los Angeles. You're from Van Nuys, right?
I grew up in Van Nuys. Then I lived in the Hollywood Hills. Then I went back to the Valley, and then I moved to Hollywood again. I always say I grew up in Hollywood because most of the times before the Cathouse and everything else, I lived in Hollywood.
Nobody wants to ever claim the valley.
Nobody ever wants to claim the valley. And if you're going to claim the valley, you sure in hell you're going to say you grew up in Van Nuys. But I did. I grew up in Van Nuys, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's funny. Now I live in Mooresville, North Carolina. And to think that a place like Van Nuys, which is only like 10 or 11 miles from Hollywood, is so different, when if I want to go see a show in Charlotte, I got to drive 30 miles, and that's nothing,
Yeah. And
I grew up in Van Nuys. I lived in Van Nuys, Sherman Oaks. There was a time that I spent a year and a half living in Huntington Beach.
Oh, yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Are you?
Yeah.
I lived at Pier Colony on PCH for a little bit, and then when I didn't have much money, I lived up by Atlanta and Delaware.
Yeah, I'm on 12th and PCH right now in this Pier House apartment complex, man. I've been here for like 15 years. I love it.
I love Huntington Beach. It changed a lot.
Yeah, big time.
But there was always a great music scene in Huntington Beach. Back in the day, a lot of the great punk rock bands, you had your LA and your OC punk rock band,
Yeah.
and they were the best, and they were still the best. I still, when I go buy vinyl, I have reissues of most of my favorite punk rock bands on vinyl.
Yeah, man, for sure. I read that your dad used to manage bands in the 70s. Is that true?
Yes, he did. He managed the band. Okay, no, a couple bands that had big hits. He managed Gary Puckett and Union Gap, who had a song that was "Young Girl, Get Out of My Mind," and he managed Lee Michaels, who had a song that said, "You know what I mean," and he managed this one band called Flash Cadillac and the Continental Kids, and this is the band that I remember the most. Flash Cadillac and the Continental Kids used to play in like the late 70s, and they were a 50s band that played 50s music, and they'd grease their hair back and they'd play all this stuff, which there was a similar band at the same time called Sha Na Na. But Flash Cadillac was rude and nasty and swore and did dirty jokes. And I remember going to see them play, and they were the band in American Graffiti. They were a band in Apocalypse Now. They were on Happy Days.
No way.
And so I, at an early age, your music is influenced by what you hear. And I was always hearing 50 songs. Yeah. So that's what really also gave me my appreciation of rockabilly, because I love roots rock and roll. So my dad was always playing that, and I was seeing these bands live. I mean, I was going to concerts and seeing bands play when I was a little kid. Yeah. So I've always been around live music and always really I went to a concert a week ago and had one of the greatest times ever. And I just appreciate, that these individuals come together and these parts all go together to make this hopefully incredible event, as opposed to being a USB.
When you before the Cathouse kicks off in '86, you were DJing, right? How did you kind of work your way into opening the Cathouse with Tammy?
I was one other thing that I think, because of the punk rock connection here, that you'll appreciate, is when I was like, I guess maybe 15 or no, maybe a little bit older, I auditioned to be the singer of the Angry Samoans.
What?
I didn't come close to getting it. I went to one of the guys' houses. I don't know if it was Bruce or whose house it was. Somebody's house in the Valley, and I sang. And the problem is, like, I was just a baby face, it didn't matter what I looked like or how I wore my hair or anything. I didn't look fucking tough. And when I sang, it didn't look tough, but I remember auditioning to be the singer when I was, and it never went anywhere. I think I probably sang to like a tape.
Back from Samoa was a great record. The Right Side of My Mind, all that stuff. I love the Angry Samoans, man. I've seen them a bunch of times. That's hilarious, dude. I didn't know that. There's awesome.
So much stuff that people don't know. Like, everybody just thinks like, dude, he's the metal dude. And I am. I mean, I love heavy metal, and I love punk rock, and I love new wave, and I don't really like techno very much.
Yeah.
But, I appreciate music. I love music.
Yeah.
But so at one point, here's another genre that I was like, I'm kind of like Forrest Gump. It's like he just ended up being in these places where these incredible things happen. And it wasn't him necessarily the part of it. It's just like he happened to be in these incredible places. So I was a punk rocker and started getting into rock and roll and heavy metal and stuff like that. And all the girls were going to the dance clubs. And I used to help this guy carry records into the dance club when they were DJs. And then I just started learning. He started saying, like, look, why don't you play the first hour at the clubs before everybody starts. So I started playing records and playing records. And I got better and better and better at it until I was one of the best club DJs in LA scene. And I started playing all these popular dance clubs that were like all the pretty people with the cocaine and the nice co-op cars, and they didn't want to have anything to do with me. And I remember one time I was sitting in a club and I was DJing in the Valley, and this girl Angela's like, hey, can my boyfriend sit with you? Like, because he doesn't really dig the scene. I know you don't dig the scene. Can he just hang out with you? I'm like, yeah. And so the guy stands up and me and him are rapping. It was Izzy Stradlin. and so we were just talking, and it was funny because, we were in it and I liked some of the music, but it wasn't like my tribe. So then I started DJing clubs, and from DJing clubs, I met Tammy. And then I was like promoting some clubs. I'm like, dude, why don't I do a rock and roll dance club? Just a dance club, but I only play rock and roll. And Tammy, who I had become friends with, was just starting his band called Faster Pussycat. And we were friends because we liked a lot of the same music. Unfortunately, certain bands like Faster Pussycat get lumped in with all the quote hair bands. And Faster Pussycat had some good rootsy, bluesy. I mean, they like punk rock. They love bands like, when people say glam bands, I think of Hanoi Rocks, which is just
the
greatest fucking bands. Hanoi Rocks was so great.
The best.
And they, we were all into that type of stuff, and T-Rex. And so we kind of opened this club together, and everybody's bands started getting signed. And all the people that were hanging out at our little club were like Guns N' Roses and Faster Pussycat and LA Guns and Junkyard and Jane's Addiction. And everybody was hanging out there. And all of a sudden, everybody's like getting record deals, but not Riki. So I just started focusing on like, let me be a whore and blow the Cathouse up. And the people that I was hanging out with at the time were like, people that were in pretty big bands, just because they came to the Cathouse, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then Guns N' Roses were just helping me all the time, promoting my club, when you've got a guy standing up in an arena saying, yeah, we're all going to go to the Cathouse. I'm like, wow. And then when you got Axl wearing Cathouse shirts and videos, it's going to do the brand. And I just kept on working the brand. And to this day, I have a coffee company called Cathouse. I have an apparel company called Cathouse. And it
took on a life of its own, and it really is one of those things that when you look back as a fan of music, when you look back on that era, it's such a huge piece of it, man. It's such a huge piece of it, and it's so cool. And when you research it for people out there, it's like little things like not allowing cameras inside. It was just like you just hear. I know. Are you bummed now that you didn't do that?
Absolutely. The reason being is I wanted people to feel like they could do whatever they wanted. I wanted to create this like bizarre, decadent thing. And I was not a promoter or a businessman. I was just some dumb rock kid like everybody else that had the keys to this party house. And Tammy worked his ass off getting all these girls there. And so pretty soon it was just nuts, and people could do whatever they want. So I didn't want any cameras in there because I didn't want any people to be like fans. And now that I think about it, it's like, wow, Robert Plant standing up at the bar. Why didn't I get a picture with Robert Plant? All these people that were showing up at the Cathouse and all these incredible shows. I mean, everybody talks about this huge feud between Vince Neil and Axl Rose, which started at the Cathouse. But what people don't know is like, couple months before that, Axl and Vince were doing a duet on stage, singing Whole Lotta Rosie. It's like all these things happen, but I was like, no, I don't want cameras in there because I want people to feel comfortable. Never knowing that, in 2022, I would still be talking about the Cathouse.
Yeah.
Or people would even give a fuck about it, And, I see vintage Cathouse shirts going on eBay for so much money. And it still blows me away that I didn't record stuff, that I didn't film stuff,
Yeah. Yeah, it is a double-edged sword. I imagine, especially, from your point of view, looking back on it, like, God damn, I wish I had some of those moments,
But we
but
have stories. We have better stories than anybody. And like I said, if you went to the whiskey, you didn't know who ran everything at the whiskey, and you didn't know who ran everything at the Ritz in New York, and you didn't know who ran everything. But when things were good at the Cathouse, it was Riki, and when things were bad at the Cathouse, it was Riki too. And you have both, you know.
what happened with Vince and Axel? Well, how did that kick off?
Basically what happened is the way the whole big Vince and Axel feud started is I was going out with a mud wrestler, as many of us were. And
Classic.
that sounds so funny because like now, like mud wrestling is like, who'd even think there was such
Yeah,
a thing?
that's such a funny, like, so I was dating a mud wrestler.
So I was dating a mud wrestler, as many of the people in bands were. And my mud wrestler girlfriend was friends with another mud wrestler who was going out with Vince Neil and eventually ended up marrying Vince Neil. I'm talking about Charisse, who actually
Yeah.
just a great, great person. And to make a long story short, Izzy grabbed her boobs. And that started everything with is Vince punching Izzy and then Axel going after Vince. And it just became a big, long thing. And it was tough for me because I was friends with Nikki Sixx at the time. And everybody's like, well, what camp are you? Are you Guns N' Roses? Are you Motley Crue? And that's why I had a feud with Poison when I was on Headbangers Ball, because CC DeVille knew that I was part of the Guns N' Roses camp. And I truly believe that I wouldn't live in the house that I live in, and I wouldn't be driving the cars or living the lifestyle that I live now if it wasn't for Guns N' Roses. I mean, I thank Guns N' Roses all the time for everything. So I was part of that camp, and there were some rivalries back then, which it's kind of fun when you think about it now.
No, I think it's cool, man. I mean, my sister was a Sunset Strip girl, and I grew up on all that shit, man. Like I loved every second of it. And it was just really cool to read about that stuff, and Hit Parader and Bam and all that sort of stuff that was going on. It was just a really cool era for me as a younger kid. I was like, I mean, I was blown away, dude. I was like looking at bands like Guns, and one of the first CD I bought with my own money was Dr. Feelgood. I think the first record I ever heard was Power Slave. So I just I was just immersed in that world. My sister's in the Bad Medicine video. Like, it's just
Wow. But you know what the thing is, you hear stories of the past and of a certain era, and you're like, oh, was it really? Like, I remember, watching movies in the 50s, and I thought it looked so cool. My mom's like, it really wasn't like that. There was a lot of bad shit going on there with racism and stuff like that. And then, you hear about times at the Cathouse and sex, drugs, rock and roll. And it was like, was it really like that? I'm like, at the Cathouse, it was way worse than you can possibly imagine. It was decadent. It was everything you can think of. The lifestyle that we led back then was pure decadence every single day. And now, especially in the culture that we live in now, it seems so wrong. Like, when women paraded in church with big boobs and tight and this and that, and now you think, oh, that's so sexist and that's that. But the women had all the power back then. And, it was like they knew what and you'd have women at the Cathouse that ran businesses, that were school teachers, and guys that are rock stars are there, and guys that are like, you know what, I actually work as an auto mechanic, but I'm going to be a rock star tonight, live that rock star lifestyle. And that was what was so brilliant about the Cathouse. If I look at stuff from back then, especially, like I said, the way the climate is now, it seems like dinosaur era. It's like, oh my God, women would look like this and guys would act like this. And, when you see guys now that are in the bands of the 80s and they're like, hey, look at these chicks. I'm like, oh, you creep. You look like such a creep. But that's the way things were. I mean, that's the way they were. And I, even back then in my whorish days, I never disrespected women. And most of us didn't. But, that's the way it was. It was an incredible lifestyle. And no, it will never, ever, ever be anything like that again. We're never going to go back to that era because we're too worried about everything, because things are dangerous. and people's attention span is low, and people just don't want to go out anymore. You know, I mean, that's what's such a shame is like, hey, you want to go to the whiskey tonight? Who's playing? I don't know. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we were going out, 5 nights a week. We had a place to go every single night.
That era, I mean, 80s and even 90s, it's crazy that, I think you have a lot of people like me who are kind of bummed on like you're talking about the just the current state of the world as far as attention span, art, entertainment, music, all that stuff. It just feels so disconnected, and a lot of stuff on the mainstream level just feels so just fake and detached, and it's just really whack. So I just think that for you being a part of something like even me growing up when I was a teenager, I kind of knew that like maybe even grunge was like one of the last like original waves to crash in a long time. Like everything now is just a repeat of everything that's already happened. It's very rare that you come across something that's new. And it's just like it drives me insane, because I just wonder, is there ever going to be a new wave of art or a new genre of music or a new style of anything that breaks through that hasn't been done before?
This band, I got to come clean on this because everybody gave me well, no, not everybody. So I went to go see a band the other night.
Who was it?
Not a new band, but according to me, they are new. They are what you would probably call, the band that the kids like.
Okay.
So I went the other night to go see My Chemical Romance.
Yes. Yeah.
Live. Okay.
An arena band now. Mind blowing. So awesome.
My Chemical Romance, and there's two bands that I will buy a plane ticket and go fly to. Iron Maiden,
yes,
and My Chemical Romance. All you people that think that this is some stupid emo band, I'm telling you straight out, one of the fucking greatest bands I've ever seen. And I've seen them all. And yes, I still love my Maiden. I still love my Slayer. I still love all that stuff. This band was so fucking good. So I went on this whole rant about My Chemical Romance and got berated by everybody except one person, who? Gary Holt from Slayer and Exodus.
Hell yeah.
Loves My Chemical Romance. He fucking loves that band. I'm telling you, that band is, dude, listen. So here they are, okay? The singer Gerard Way, who probably 10, 15 years ago was one of the big rock pop icons. Like all the girls loved him, right?
Yep.
Everybody loved Gerard. The girls, oh my God, Gerard Way. Everybody at Hot Topic, Gerard Way. Dude comes out in fucking running shorts, like just old running shorts and some like big white t-shirt. And he looked, if he cleaned up a little bit, he would have looked like a roadie. Okay. He looked like just some guy that just got up on stage and started playing. And I was like, well, that's not what I expected. And my wife says, he's a genius. I'm like, excuse me? And what it is they have good songs. And he was showing that, hey, I'm about the music. I'm not about this image. I'm just like honestly, there was no effort put into what he was wearing at all. And the band was like, I don't know if you like them or not, but dude, they're not this like dumb Hot Topic emo band. I can't believe I'm spending all this time.
No. I know those guys well. I know Frank, the guitar player, well, and I got a lot. They're awesome. I got a lot of love for that band.
The best thing was like they were all huge Headbangers Ball fans.
Oh yeah, probably for sure.
So Mikey reached out to me, and I got to go backstage and meet everybody in that band, and they were excited to meet the Headbangers Ball host. I was excited to see this band that blew me the fuck away, and we just hung out for like an hour, and it was like I look, I'm like, okay, when's Maiden playing? Because I'll fly out to go see Maiden. And believe it or not, I wasn't a huge Maiden fan when I was younger. It was just after I saw Maiden live that I was like, holy shit, this band is so fucking good live. I love Iron Maiden. And I also really liked My Chemical Romance. Like there aren't many bands that I would go fly to go see, but that's one of them.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I haven't caught them yet since they've been back, but I have a couple friends who are working with the camp And I know the guys, and man, I'll tell you what, I mean, their fans are absolutely incredible, complete fanatics, which is awesome. The band, when they were on their first run, they did a bunch of stuff that was really creative. They definitely like had their own lane, and it was really cool. And it was something that, even though I might not have been like the craziest fan musically, it was something that I still enjoyed musically, but I also, more than anything, just respected what they were doing. And then, to go away for a while and to, man, I mean, I knew whenever they came back that it was going to be big. But dude, some of the places that they're playing and some of the crowds that I've seen in the UK or on the shows they're doing now, show you went to, dude, it's insane. And everyone's singing every single fucking word. And I mean, as a fan of music, I mean, there's haters are gonna hate, you know what I mean? That's what they do. But as a fan of music, I'm stoked to see that, and I'm stoked for those guys to be enjoying that moment because they deserve it. And it's also just rad to see people back at shows in that fashion for a newer band, like we're talking about, and they're going off. I mean, they're singing every word, they're going crazy, and it's fucking cool.
I was like, and you know what another show is? Like, there's shows that I go into, like, okay, impress me. And I'll be honest, when I went to go see when the Misfits first got back together,
yeah.
Glenn and Doyle and Jerry and everything, I was like, okay, this is a money grab. And I was like, holy fuck, this is so fun. And I'm sitting here watching this, and that was the show I flew in for. I flew to Philadelphia to go see him.
Yeah. I was at that show. I was at that.
Oh,
show.
you were?
Yeah. I went with Joey Castillo. He was, he plays drums in the Bronx. So we went there. We saw that show. It was unbelievable. Yeah, it was the first time I met Danzig was after that show. It was awesome.
It was so much fun. Yeah. And I saw them in an arena. And yes, we know that everybody buys Misfit shirts. Okay. I don't play that gatekeeper, like name 3 songs. I don't give a fuck. Look, if somebody that's a Kardashian wants to buy a Cathouse shirt, maybe I don't want that, but whatever. But to see everybody singing Misfit songs that probably weren't into the band before, I was like, I don't care. I'm having like so much fun at that Misfit show. And I like that, I like the show and be like, but the MCR thing, it's, I wrote them off as being a dumb emo band. And then I saw that video for Helena, which just fucking knocked me off my feet. And then, I mean, I'm telling you, they're one of my favorite bands now. And the people that don't like them probably don't know anything about them and never seen them. There's so many bands that are just great. Like, I remember when and I can't say I'm a big Avenged Sevenfold fan, but people wrote them off as being some stupid poppy punk band. I'm like, dude, when you listen to that song Backcountry, if anything, that sounds like it'd be on Appetite for Destruction. Like a lot of these bands that people say there's no, and I'm also a guy that doesn't say there aren't any new metal bands. There's a lot of metal bands that I really like that are new, and I do, and even though I do go back to a lot of my older stuff, there's a lot of bands, like this band Unto Others that is like metal, but kind of goth sort of. And they're really, really interesting. And this band Havoc that I really like. And I know Municipal Waste isn't that new, but they weren't around during Headbangers Ball days. And I really like that band as well. I mean, there's a lot of bands that are out there playing that are still really good.
What did you, who opened that My Chemical show? Was it Turnstile?
Yeah. Now let me talk about Turnstile for a second. Okay.
Yeah.
So when Turnstile came out, I think it would have been maybe about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
They were on my radio right away. And I heard them and I'm like, this shit's old punk rock. This shit is old punk rock. And I was way into Turnstile. I just was like, I mean, there's photos of me wearing Turnstile shirts years ago. And I thought they were so phenomenal. And then they started releasing stuff that sort of got a little bit more commercially acceptable. That's not called selling out. It's called changing the style a little bit, becoming more commercially acceptable. But the songs like Holiday and Mystery, I still really dug. Yeah. And then I watched videos of them on YouTube and I'm like, look at this band playing. It's like everybody's on the stage, jumping off the stage. I was like, this is so raw. And none of my peers had ever heard of Turnstile. And I was turning friends on to Turnstile. And I'm like, this is like old punk rock shit. Have you heard this band? And telling all these people about this band. And then I saw them live open up and I knew every song that they played. but they played a lot of the more acceptable songs, which isn't bad. I mean, it's just, I wanted to see him in the early hardcore days, and I never did.
Yeah.
So, but they're still a great, great band. Great band. I mean, I like that band.
Yeah, they're crushing it right now too, and it's that's another thing that's really cool to see. It's like as far as just young bands getting success, and also just the crowds and people just being into music. It's something that a lot of us, especially going through the pandemic, we missed it so much. And outside of the pandemic, just the way the world has just turned into like an instant gratification, no attention span, singles, not records, just that whole thing. The way the music industry is trending, it's just rad to see people just old school into it. You know what I mean?
One thing that I noticed at that MCR show that I don't notice very often is I remember, I don't even know how many years back it was. It might have been 10 years ago or something. I went to go see Slayer play.
Yeah.
And the opening band was this band, Children of Bodom.
Yeah.
And they were the very first band on. And I didn't know who they were. And I went to go see him. And I remember walking down and watching this guitarist. And I just stood there in the crowd by myself. And all my friends were like, we're going backstage, go say hi to the guys. I'm like, okay. And I just stood there with my jaw dropped. I'm like, holy fuck, this band is so good. And people don't pay attention to the opening bands at all and don't acknowledge them. And it's like, oh, yeah. So when I went to go see My Chemical Romance the other day, they had Turnstile play, and they had this band Soul Glow open up.
Yeah.
Soul Glow, to me, which I knew nothing about, it's sort of kind of like an industrial Bad Brain, sort of, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sort of. And it was like a lot of screaming, a lot of stuff. But everybody stayed in their seats and cheered after every song. And I don't think there were a lot of Soul Glow fans there. They were just appreciating something new. And everybody went nuts for Turnstile, and everybody went nuts for, and I thought that was really cool. You know what I'm really curious about? God, we've spanned every music genre on this, haven't we? I'm really curious to see what's going to happen Tuesday, this week, when I go see Megadeth open up for Five Finger Death Punch.
Ooh, that's going to be an interesting gig.
Like, what's going to happen? Like, is it going to be just as packed for Five Finger Death Punch? Are Five Finger Death Punch fans Megadeth fans? Are Megadeth fans of Five Finger Death Punch?
Those are kind of two weird fan bases, if you think about it. Not weird, but it's just like they're just different. Because I mean, Megadeth's coming off of the metal tour that they just did with Lamb of God and all that stuff. I mean, those were big shows, with Trivium and all that stuff. Those were huge shows. Mustaine, all-time classic character. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know that better than anybody.
and Five Finger, man. They got love for the Bronx, which is super cool, but they're one of those bands that's polarizing. A lot of people love them, a lot of people hate them. So it's just like one of those things where that's going to be that's kind of a wild bill. It's going to be fun.
Here's the deal with Five Finger Death Punch. Okay. Everybody hates Five Finger Death Punch, and they sell millions of records.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not everybody.
No. And I have to give props to Five Finger Death Punch because of two things. One, Chris Cale is a sweet guy. I've ridden motorcycles, gone on long rides with Chris Cale. And on the new Five Finger Death Punch album, there's a song called Gutter Gold. And it says...
Good song title.
It says in the song, 1 foot in the gutter, 1 fist in the gold, which, if people don't know, that's my saying that I said at the end of every Headbangers Ball. For 5 years, I said, we'll keep 1 foot in the gutter, 1 fist in the goal. And my spoken word show is called 1 foot in the gutter. So yes, they totally took that line from me. And the singer Ivan and Chris Cale wrote to me and said, hey, we're putting a song on the album that is honoring your saying at the end of the thing. And I was like,
no way.
Like, that's kind of, I haven't heard the song, but I thought that was really, really cool.
That's awesome, man. What if the song's terrible? Are you still gonna?
I don't know. I don't know. I am curious to see the show. I'm curious to see I'm going to go see the show. I'm going to be there for all of the I don't remember who the opening band was. The Who. HU, which is also going to be an interesting show.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I'm enjoying the aging Dave Mustaine, like crabby old Dave Mustaine. I'm he's really doing something.
Have you heard any new Megadeth?
Oh man,
you don't like it?
I wasn't really feeling the new single, man. You know, I wasn't. Is it awesome? You digging it?
I heard it. I liked it.
Yeah. I was always a huge I was a huge fan of you know the golden era with Marty Friedman and all, you know, all those records. I was a huge Megadeth fan. But you know, honestly, even, I mean, you and I both know what a huge record Countdown to Extinction was. I mean, that record, dude, that record is
I can still put it on and love it.
It's so good. And it sounds so good too. When you headphone that record, like if you're just driving or running or doing anything, oh man, it's so good.
Megadeth was different from a lot of other bands because Megadeth had so many changes and stuff that it was almost like jazz, you know, like my favorite Megadeth song, which is I don't even think is on anybody's favorite list, is this song Lucretia. And it's like, it's kind of like jazzy, the way it goes up and down. And you know, it was tough those times when me and Mustaine did have a little feud for a very short time because it sucked. Because it's like, I like Megadeth and I don't want to listen to this band. If there's a band that you have a feud with, it sucks. It's fun.
Yeah.
But if it's a band that you really like, it's like, but
when Guns and Metallica had their thing, were you ever tight with Metallica? Did you ever?
No, I love Metallica. I still love Metallica. A couple of Metallica albums that I really hate, and I still love Metallica. And I think everybody in that band is great, and they're all very, very kind to me. But Metallica was a band, even though James used to hang it, like sometimes at the Cathouse, like the lights would come on, and the last two people
you see James Hetfield,
James and Glenn Danzig. And James and Glenn Danzig would be the last two people hanging out at the Cathouse. I mean, that happened a lot. But I was never like, I've never spoke to anybody in Metallica on the phone. Nobody in Metallica, I think, ever texted me.
Yeah.
But I always liked Metallica. And most time that I was hanging out with Metallica would be to shoot Headbangers Ball, as opposed to Guns N' Roses. You know, I mean, 2 months ago, I had dinner with Slash, you know? So it's like, those are my family. Those are my friends. You know, they wish me happy birthday. Metallica, I love Metallica. You can't say that, even though it was on Stranger Things. Master of Puppets is still one of the greatest metal songs of all time. And I don't know how popular that song gets. It still was, you know. So, but I didn't have to. It was weird when that feud happened, but it didn't really affect me in any way. It was just kind of weird, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I love this conversation, but I know we gotta wrap it up at some point. So I want to get into Headbangers Ball because that was obviously a huge era for you, and for me personally, growing up, a lot of metalheads, you know, you went from, you know, it's funny, I was kind of young when Adam Curry was doing his thing, but I didn't realize he was, you know, such a square until kind of later on, you know, and people would kind of clown him a little bit. But when you came on to the Headbangers Ball, it felt like you know, it felt like the show had been kind of claimed by the fans and by the people. You know what I mean? It felt right. It felt really good. And I just want to talk about for a minute, you know, what was that like, getting that gig, going into that era, and, you know, starting your VJ career, you know?
Well, what a lot of people don't understand is my first time ever being on television or radio or anything was on MTV. I had never gone to school to study anything or practice or anything. It's like, okay, 3, 2, 1, bam. So I was terrible, you know. I mean, I'm not throwing any shade on Eddie Trunk or Jose or any of those other people. They all went to school for broadcasting. They're all good journalists and reporters. And I was just like this guy in Hollywood that had the Cathouse. My first episodes were terrible. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. It was actually like that the entire time I was on this show. But it's weird. It was really weird being like I became recognized instantly.
Yeah.
And that was really weird. That was really weird to go to an airport and somebody call out your name. So when somebody says Riki Rachtman, so I obviously go over there to see who it's like, hey man, I don't, it's like, no, dude, I just watched Headbangers Ball. Oh, I thought you were my friend, you know, like it was really weird. It was incredible. I got a lot of shit for it too. I had a lot. That was before they were called haters. They were just people that hated me. And I got a lot of crap for it. And that was something that was really hard on me at first. And then and I think I might not have.
Why did you get hate? What was the backlash?
I'll tell you why. If you liked rock and roll between 1990 and 95, if you could have any job in the world, you'd want to be the host of Headbangers Ball.
Yes.
And you probably believed you could do it better than me. I mean, if you think about it, if you bought a heavy metal record, you wanted to be the host of Headbangers Ball. Everybody wanted to be it. So if I fucked up, and the thing is, with me, I don't mind being the butt end of a joke. I don't mean being portrayed as a clown sometimes. You know, people think that a lot of these musicians that screwed with me, hated with me, you know, oh, Glenn Danzig hated you. He tried to throw you in the fire. Yeah, of course, he was also playing my birthday party, you know, in front of a couple people, you know, before that. And, oh, Dave Mustaine hated you. Yeah, but I was the only rock and roll guy at his wedding. And, you know, but I didn't mind being that guy because I wanted the show to be entertaining. So if it's entertaining for people to see their rock star give this kid shit, then go ahead and bring it, you know, because I want this show to be entertaining. And I have never been the guy to say like, so tell me more about the producer and the engineering. It's like, I don't give a fuck. Yeah. So I wanted to have fun. And more as the season progressed, in the years of being Headbangers Ball, I started steering away from all those generic questions. But the main thing is, if you were in a Headbangers Ball and you loved bands like Slaughter, you know, you hated me because I played Slayer. And if you loved Slayer, you hated me because I played Slaughter. People, I never, ever, ever, ever picked any videos. On my birthday, I said, can I pick a video? And the video was Motorhead. So I never got to pick a video or a guest. And yes, I was interviewing bands that I did not like at all. And I couldn't be a dick because guess what, everybody? This was my job. I'm making a lot of money and I'm flying all around the world hanging out with bands. Some bands I liked, some bands I didn't. But I couldn't say I didn't like a band because that's my job. You work at fucking Taco Bell. You go tell the boss you're going to make sushi next week. You don't have a job. Okay? This was what my job is. And I took a lot of shit from some people for it. And I began to resent some of that, which I shouldn't have. I should have been more grateful. And it took me many, many years to realize that I did have the greatest job I kind of did. You know, it was only like in the past 10 years that I realized, holy fuck, I had the best job in the world.
Oh, you know, man. It was the raddest show, and you were the raddest host. I mean, one of the things, you know, for me that I've always loved about you is you're a punk rocker, but yet, you know, you ran the Cathouse. You were there to witness the punks versus kind of the hair metal Sunset Strip battle, and also the kind of, you know, the intro to grunge, kind of like, you know, coming into the metal scene and all that stuff. A lot of genre clashing, but so many great bands in all three areas. And I've always felt like you kind of represented everyone in a good way, to where it's like you were a fan of Black Flag. You know, the fucking Water Park Alice in Chains episode is, I mean, dude, when you're holding the fucking mic above Cantrell's snorkel, it was like it was the fucking.
You know when the last time I saw that? You know when the last time I saw that episode was?
When?
Yesterday. Because there's going to be a whole section in my spoken word show about that episode.
Oh, dude.
But that, to me, was what Headbangers Ball was.
Yes.
It was a band that all they wanted to do was have fun. And, you know, there were certain things that I did that, you know, it's 1992. I cut all my hair off. Everybody was furious about that
So
because
crazy.
that meant, and the other thing, and fuck, I'm 60 years old. I decided to get a mohawk. The other thing, like people took everything like, oh, Ricky's wearing a flannel shirt now because he's grunge. He sold out. He's grunge. I'm like, you dumb motherfuckers. I've always been a biker. I've always ridden motorcycles, and I wear flannels because it gets cold. And I was wearing flannels before because it's cold, but now I'm wearing flannels because Eddie Vedder wears flannels. No, I'm wearing I'm wearing a flannel because I ride motorcycles, and that keeps me warm. It's like people just took everything I did, and because I like it's like metal doesn't care. Metal embraces everything and it's rebellious. You do whatever the fuck you want unless you change your hair. It's like, dude, I had Headbangers Ball. I did Headbangers Ball with blue hair. I did Headbangers Ball with short white hair. It looked stupid as fuck. I admit that. The blue hair was kind of cool. But because I like to just do stupid shit. I have never been one to conform. And I didn't, even on Headbangers Ball, I didn't wear the Headbangers Ball uniform because I'd like to do crazy shit because I like to do stupid stuff. I like to dress how I dress, and I'm old and I don't want to wear old people clothes. Because that's not me. Not because I'm trying to be younger, not because I'm trying to fit in with the kids. It's just because that's how I feel comfortable. And I'm very lucky that the life that I live, come on, I get to do whatever I want. My wife is one of the great tattoo artists, and gorgeous. And it's like, this is a pretty rad way to live your later lives,
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like, looking back on your life and just the appreciation that you have for where you're at now, because
yes,
I've been through a fair amount of shit in my life, but and the appreciation I have for just everything I have at the current moment is, it's overwhelming, man. Life is beautiful. It can be insane. It can be tragic. It can be, anything and everything on the spectrum of emotions. But you seem like someone who is appreciative for the good times and the bad.
I wish I was then. I wish I was then. I wish I sat back and said, holy crap, I'm now on the road with Slayer. Oh my God, I'm in England with Drag. Oh, here I am with, I did get very starstruck when I interviewed Angus Young and Brian Johnson. I was starstruck that day, and they were so nice. And that was the day that I was like, whoa, this is fucking cool. And for Lemmy, who is my I've got 2 Lemmy tattoos. For Lemmy to look at me and call me my friend, and for Lemmy to always be there when I needed anything, like, that's something that's very surreal. In my house, I have a lot of Lemmy things, some very, very personal things. And, Lemmy and his manager, Todd, were like, up until Lemmy's death, always wished me a happy birthday. These are all very, that is still surreal to think that I was close personal friends with Lemmy.
Yeah, man.
Not for the business, not for anything else, but because we genuinely loved each other, and there's people, and that, to know that Slash or any of these people call me to wish me happy birthday. We were friends before they got famous, but Motorhead was fucking Motorhead when I met Lemmy, and that's pretty cool, and I'm going to bring a trunk and share some of the things, the little artifacts that I have that mean a lot to me. I'm going to bring, it's going to be a show where I'm talking, but like, I've set a little set that in the corner has a record player, my Tower Records plastic crate that used to go to Tower Records to buy records, and my Alva skateboard. And I've got this in a corner, and I'm going to sit there and go through some of the records that meant a lot to me. And then I'm going to, so it's like, I hope it all works out because I have no idea.
Oh, that's going to be killer, dude. I was going to ask you about like exactly that. Like, do you have a lot of memorabilia, record collection? Do you have a lot of that stuff that you've, kind of, I imagine you've come into along the way, or did you lose track of that stuff, or how were you with all that? Did you keep stuff? Did you?
I'm trying to, there's something in here that I'd love to show you, but I don't know where it was. I never asked anybody for their autographs back then, but I recently found a book that I had on the set that I left for people to sign. And I didn't even realize until recently that I had that. And it's got everybody writing me notes from,
No way.
from Dimebag to Phil to Lane to Tom Araya to whatever, just all this shit. I've got a lot of memorabilia. Most people know that I do have a bullet that's got Lemmy's ashes in it.
Yeah.
And that was in my pocket when I got married. It will be in my pocket when I'm on stage for the spoken word. I do have some things, gold, platinum records. There are some things that I have, but I didn't save a lot of it. And I, not to realize that it would mean so much to me. Obviously the Lemmy bullet is my most prized possession. And
do you have like a lot of like first press records, anything like that? Did you hold? No,
I think I do.
I'm sure you do.
But I don't, like, really know. I mean, I played records and I was looking at records that I was playing when I was DJing. I'm like, oh, this is an original Ramones, but it's fucked up. It's so scratched up. I play records. I mean, I have a really, really, really old TSOL Dance With Me, but I also have a really, really new TSOL Dance With Me, and I have the album. I remember, it's so funny. I'm talking about so many different genres. I remember when Operation Mindcrime from Queensryche came out. I was like, what?
Oh, dude. That was a huge record for me, dude. Huge. I had the box set, the Operation Live Crime thing with the VHS thing in it.
And the reason that Operation Mindcrime was a big deal for me, even though it was, a little bit later in the years, it was the first record that had, like, I had all of our brash, Hollywood, gypsy, junkie metal bands, but I was never into a lot of the, you know what I mean? But Queensryche was the first band that was like, yeah, she's the queen of the world. And then I got into them, like Motley Crue, even though, they did a lot of that, but I was into Motley, of course.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really into the bands like Queensryche. And then when Operation Mindcrime came in, I just played it every fucking day and then started going into all the old stuff. And that band, like, I think there's certain records that were real game changers for me. And I'm going to show what those were in my spoken word. Deep Purple, Machine Head changed my mind, changed my life. As much as Motley Crue Shout at the Devil, as much as, TSOL Dance With Me, as much as, Iron Maiden Killers. I mean, there's a lot of records that just like were game changers for me. Motorhead. I mean, I remember Motorhead especially because when the first Motorhead album came out, I listened to that album and I'm like, I fucking love this punk band Motorhead. Because if you ever listen to that song Motorhead or the song Vibrator or any of the things on the first album, there's no way to say it's anything but punk rock. But like Glenn said, they played rock and roll.
Yeah, man, we did Bronx does a cover. We did a cover of Over the Top and it, dude, it's so good. And it's supposed to come out on this comp that's like literally who knows when it's going to come out. We might actually have to pull it because it's like we started playing it live too, dude. And oh my God, it's so fun. And that song just rips, dude. It's so
How about your record?
Hey, thank you.
I bought your record and I don't buy a lot of records. And I don't remember I don't remember what song it was that I heard that I was like, and I don't know if you know who Ace Von Johnson is. Ace Von Johnson played in Faster Pussycat.
Okay.
He plays in LA Guns. But what a lot of people don't know is like he played in Murphy's Law for a little bit. And even though he's a young kid, like he loves punk rock. So when I met him as the guitarist of Faster Pussycat, and he said, yeah, we like a lot of the same music. And there's one band that is my test. It's like your name 3 songs.
Yeah.
And so the one record that I use as my test to see if we can continue this conversation about punk rock. Ready to hear this? It's The Avengers.
Oh, wow.
So because when I was in a band called Battery Club, we used to do the song American in Me. And I really loved, which was a lot of people don't know The Avengers. They were a San Francisco band with this girl singer. And I always liked the Avengers. And so I remember when I first met Ace, I'm like, you like the Avengers? And he's like, fuck American me. And I was like, okay. And then we would talk about TSOL and Adolescence and all the bands that we both love. But a lot of people know TSOL and the Adolescence in Germany. But a lot of people don't know the Avengers. They were a band from San Francisco, I believe in the late 70s. And they were really, really good. They were really, really good as like an early punk rock band. I also went through my phase where I was just listening to, Sham 69, Angelic Upstarts, Cockney Rejects.
Yeah.
And I like those bands, especially Sham, because Hersham Boys had every type of music on it. It was a lot of, I like bands that's why I like the Rolling Stones so much. Because the Rolling Stones play so many different types of, Rolling Stones have, Girl with Faraway Eyes is a country song.
Yeah.
And I liked when bands could play different types of music. The same reason why I like the Clash.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Well, Riki, I don't want to take up too much more of your time here, but this is the Sailor Jerry podcast. Sailor Jerry, Norman Collins, of course, one of the godfathers of traditional tattooing. And you were one of the first kind of heavily, tattooed TV hosts, back in the day. The first.
It said that in International Tattoo Magazine in 1993 that I was the first heavily tattooed person on television. And here's my real quick story to leave you. Okay. So because I was the first, I was up for the job to host Ink Master. Okay. And they penciled me in. I was supposed to host Ink Master. And they said, you're going to host it, book off this time. I'm like, fuck yeah. But then they called me after 2 months. I'm like, what's up? They go, what's between you and Dave Navarro? So I instantly knew that I wasn't going to get the job and that Dave Navarro was going to get the job. But if I would have gotten that job, my wife, Leah Vendetta, was on season 1 of Ink Master. And if I would have gotten that job, I wouldn't have been, because I'm not going to hook up with a contestant.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have met my wife. So even the most negative things that happen in your life, give it time, because when those really positive things happen in your life, you have to understand those positive things wouldn't have happened if you didn't go through that shit before. So even the negative stuff, there might be a reason that it puts you in a certain position. So every great thing that happens in your life knows that great thing wouldn't have happened if you didn't go through that shit back then. So thank God I didn't get that job. Because
man. That's fucking incredible, dude. That's fucking awesome. So, okay, everybody out there, September 11th, the Neighborhood Theater, Charlotte, North Carolina, 1 Foot in the Gutter, Riki Rachtman, live.
I have tickets. I have discounted tickets at cathousehollywood.com. Please go join me for my show, please.
Yes, absolutely. You know what, man? I really appreciate this conversation, Riki. I'm a huge fan, and this has been great. So much love and continued success. One last question for you that I kind of like to ask everybody, especially someone like you who's been through so much. What, in your opinion, is the meaning of life?
Something that I need to learn to do much more. Appreciate. I don't do it near enough. And you got to appreciate. You got to stop back and have really good coffee. And that's it.
My man.
Appreciate.
My man. Thank you very much, Riki. I appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you.
All right. Peace. Oh, yeah. That's a wrap on episode 44 of the Sailor Jerry podcast. What an awesome episode, ladies and gentlemen. As always, huge amounts of gratitude and respect to our guest, the one and only Riki Rachtman. Riki, thank you so much for your time, man. I grew up on Headbangers Ball. I grew up on 80s metal and punk rock, and we are very much cut from the same cloth. And, you know, Riki paved the way. So thank you very much, my man, for everything that you do. He has his very first spoken word performance engagement just days away, 1 Foot in the Gutter at the Neighborhood Theater in Charlotte, North Carolina. There is a link for that in the bio here of the podcast episode, and you can go to catthousehollywood.com and get tickets there as well. Of course, you can follow Riki Rachtman at Riki Rachtman on Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. You can follow me. I'm 213 Mattman on Instagram, Stolen Tuxedo on Twitter. Of course, you better be following Sailor Jerry across all platforms. And ladies and gentlemen, please do not forget the reason why we are all here. And that is that Sailor Jerry spiced rum is still made the old school way, 92 proof, bold and smooth as hell. We'll see you in 14 days. Peace.